Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining. Today is Tuesday, July 15th, 2025. The NBDA, we're thankful to our panel members and those in attendance today at our quarterly meeting aimed to unite bicycle retailers and suppliers to chat through best practices. This panel was established in 2024 as an advocacy effort by the NBDA aimed to unite the industry in discussion aimed at challenging topics that retailers and suppliers are navigating and opening up the lines of communication to hopefully put some insight, put some opinion forward so we can be more aligned and work in better partnership. Strong retailers, strong suppliers, strong industry. We all need one another, and we need to come to some sort of working agreement that is beneficial for all. So that is the aim of this advocacy panel, and we do appreciate the time that everyone has put into this conversation today. Again, thank you to the panel members. For those joining us as attendees today, if you're viewing as a participant, we do want your participation as we progress today. How you can do that is you can place your questions into the chat, and you can also use the Q&A function. And throughout the event today, the panel members, the experts, will address those questions, and some questions we'll even talk through live during the conversation. Again, our attendees, we do really urge you to get involved in the conversation. The more voices that come together, the more it kind of opens up everyone's opinions and shares what people are thinking, and the more we can get proactive in our movements forward. And with that, I want to turn it over to Peter Henry. He's the NBDA board chair, and he's just going to open us up with a reminder of why we're here, why this is important. He's also part of our best practices committee at the NBDA. And Peter, thank you for your time today. Oh, Peter, we lost your sound. That's okay.
Yep.
Zoom.
There you go.
Perfect.
Thank you, panelists, and thank you, everybody here that has come to listen. We really appreciate your participation. So for decades, Jay Townley has been warning us that if we keep doing what we've always been doing, we're going to continue to decline into irrelevance. And I'm really pleased with today's topics because they both address things that as a community, as an industry, that where we can make some changes that will help us to compete more effectively into the future. First one, our sales funnel approach. Most bike shops, I don't think, are very skilled at this. Prior to 2020, most of our sales training was focused on how can we close the sale today with a customer that just walked in the door. And to think about following up with that customer never really occurred, I think, to many of us, because there was always going to be more customers walking in tomorrow. Then 2020, 2021, who had time to sell? If you could get it, nobody was going to buy it. So no need to sell. And then come 22 and 23, we were just kind of holding on, trying to survive financially. And the idea that we would put at risk any effort change seemed just out of reach. And now we're beginning to see some shops actually sort of succeeding. And one thing I've heard about is that they're beginning to reach out to prospects, to previous customers, and say, hey, how's it going? Have you heard about this new bike? Do you want to come take a test ride? We'd love to see you again. And getting some success with that. So really getting to the way a lot of professional salespeople have been thinking for years. But most of us didn't have any systems for that. Yet today, we need to really think about every prospect and every past customer as precious and something to be nurtured and really developed. There are some brands who are doing well because they're developing and strengthening the relationships with retailers. Some brands started off as purely direct to consumer, and they're realizing, whoa, working with local bike shops can be a really effective, cost-effective way to meet the needs of our customers and actually turn them into loyal repeat customers who will be brand boosters for us because they'll consistently have a good experience with our product. There are a lot of efforts a lot of suppliers make to kind of build the sales funnel. We have suppliers who are pretty good at putting on demo events with us. But if we really talk together at all about what is this about? It's really about developing a sales funnel. There's opportunity, bringing people into it, creating opportunities to close sales. But I don't think coordination is particularly good at how do we make all of those things happen optimally, and how do we, in terms of the financial commitment to it, there are different rewards at different time frames for different people. There aren't a lot of bike shops that are in a position to spend much money on something that's going to only pay off years in the future, whereas I would hope that many of our suppliers are able to think on those kind of time frames. I believe there's substantial benefit for all of us in aligning these efforts better. And so I think what our panelists will be talking about today is going to be helping to launch some of that better coordination. Opportunity is a little bit different with MSRP, that's manufactured suggested retail price, and MAP, minimum advertised pricing. Because of antitrust laws, these things need to be done unilaterally by the brand, and collaboration isn't called collaboration, it's collusion. Price fixing, definite no-no. During the 2010, MAP was widely supported by retailers. It protected retailers from nationwide discount pressure from a small retailer in a small state, discounting the 3 bikes too many that they bought because they only have a population of 2 in their town, so they got to sell into a national market. And yet it would then depress the value of the bike everywhere in the country. And that's obviously not a good thing, and a lot of support from MAP. And of course, suppliers are happy to get on board because it protected the perceived value of their brand. It also protected small retailers from being targeted by a big retailer who would then, in that one market, they discount heavily, drive them out of business. They have that market all to themselves. I think there are some big department stores who are kind of famous for taking that approach. But it's not collusion for us to speak, for retailers to speak to our suppliers and say, oh, this aspect of it isn't working well for us. We wish it could be changed in this way. The supplier can listen, they can make their own decisions about what to do, and hopefully they will listen. The problem with MAP in general, especially now where the MSRP, the suggested retail price, and the minimum advertised price are the same price. It means that everybody in the country, whether it's a wealthy part of the country or a not so wealthy part, is selling at the same price all the time. Now, part of the traditional tool bag of retailers be able to, get a good price for it most of the time, and then put on a big promotion where you're a little bit more aggressive in your pricing. You make your product available to people who otherwise can afford it. You tend to be super busy. You're not going to offer the same customer service level during that time. So people are happy both ways. Either you can give them a great customer service level, or you can give them a great price. But that's kind of impossible with the way MSRP and MAP are being implemented now. So in that way, incentives are really damaging, and I suspect our panelists will have a whole lot more to say about this. So we need to be developing some new strategies, and it's great to get this thinking going, because think about strategies. Yeah, you can get benefit for yourself by being a great strategic thinker and always being ahead of everybody else. But if you're good at thinking that way, you're always going to be ahead of everybody else. But when you share those strategies, you make a healthier industry. And one good strategy is to be competing, to be playing in a healthy industry. So let's go get them. Thank you again, panelists. Thank you again, everybody here. And let's get into it. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, let's go get them. I love that. It is all about new strategies. The thought process behind this panel was just that, to give a place where people could share their opinion without judgment, in a very safe place, and hopefully by hearing each other's opinions, that gets our own brain thinking and helps us see things in a new light. And then on the next run, on the next bike ride, on the next walk, we're thinking, oh, okay, maybe I should connect with this person and maybe we could do things this way. So just an idea share today, just a think tank. So I hope you guys really enjoy it. Embrace these two topics. These are great topics today. Given our current state of our industry, we're talking about building demand. When growing ridership and door swings are at an all-time concern, it was such a great topic. And topic two, we're talking about looking at MSRP and MAP and how that margin impacts, that final realized margin impacts the retailer who's working hard to make sure that they're able to keep their doors open. So great topics. Let's be fully engaged. How we do get the topics submitted is Megan Schmidt, who is our programs developer, reaches out to our community about 4 weeks prior to the event and says, we're having this advocacy panel. What topics would you like to see the experts talk about? And those are how we solicit topics. We then choose the, I'd say, most timely ones to present. And then we solicit speakers. So if you're an attendee today and you'd like to be more involved in the process forward, we always welcome more people to get more involved with the NBDA. Just reach out to us. So how we'll progress today is those two topics. I'll read the topic. We have 3 panel experts who will speak on the topic without interruption. And then at the end, we'll have a group discussion. And again, attendees, that's where we really would like your participation as well. So let's get into it. Topic 1 is building demand. And we're talking about managing the funnel from when a customer has consideration to purchasing at your store or getting into the sport, to conversion when they purchase the product and beyond. This topic actually came up at our Summit Central, so I'm so happy to see it on our agenda today. To further dive into the topic, it's as a retailer or supplier, what does your marketing funnel look like in practice? How do you nurture potential customers through each stage, which we would say are awareness, consideration, conversion, and that final piece I love, the loyalty. And what indicators do you rely on to forecast demand for planning sales? Great conversation. I'm thrilled to kick it off with Peter Woolery from Bicycle Market Research. Peter is a fantastic contributor to the NBDA, to our summit events, to our panel events. Peter, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. I always enjoy having these conversations and digging into things. Let me just share this screen here. What made me start thinking about this aspect is I've started a new project where I'm aggregating data from bicycle retailers together. And in that, I have a list of retailers, and I developed a marketing funnel for what stage those retailers are in. And it made me think of it for retailers and for suppliers, how they might go about looking at it. You certainly talked about the awareness and that conversion cycle and then loyalty. So I just wanted to give a quick example of the marketing funnel and how it might relate to bicycle retailers. So if we start at the broadest level, you have a population. In my case, it's all of the retailers across the country. Not that useful. But if we look at traditional bike shops, normally it's going to be your particular region. It's everyone in your area. Again, that's just population level. And as we've seen with the recent participation studies that the NBDA and Human Powered Solutions talked about on their recent podcast, that can be a little tricky. You don't necessarily know how valuable that is. And that's where you get into this next stage of suspects. And that's just narrowing down your total population to who you think might be interested. They're not yet engaged or aware, as you referenced, with your brand, but you suspect that they would be interested in the products or services that you have to offer. From there, that's where we get into that awareness stage, where they become aware of your brand. You've somehow engaged them. In one example, we could say that's someone coming and visiting your store. They physically have walked into the store after somehow finding out about it, whether that's signage or that's broader marketing where you're kind of broadcasting out or doing some targeted social media, but you've moved them from a suspect to a prospect. And this is where, okay, you can engage with that person and develop the right relationship to find a good product or service match with that end consumer. From that stage, once you've found that match, then you have a good qualified lead. You have the product or service and you have the customer, and now you need to try and work to convert them. What ideally would happen is that you're finding the right positioning such that you're delivering great value and you're facilitating that process. As a retailer, you're rewarded for that value in the margin that you gain. Same thing with suppliers, right? They're developing the product, and ideally, that's contributing great value to the retailer. And so they deserve a margin along that path as well. And in this process, moving them from prospects into leads and kind of converting that aspect, that's where you're developing that value. And I know I'm using a little different terminology than Heather just mentioned, but you can see that it lines up fairly well. At that stage, once you've converted them, then they are your customers. Unfortunately, a lot of times for bicycle shops, it's just a single transactional aspect. What I don't have on here is what Heather mentioned at the end there, is nurturing that relationship so you can have repeat value and improve that lifetime value of your customers. So once you've closed them, the process doesn't stop there. So you have this diagram of your marketing funnel, and you have the top of the funnel where you're kind of moving everyone throughout that process. Well, what can be useful about this in breaking down how you're looking at it is to see, okay, where are we falling short? And a lot of the conversation this year coming out of resources like the P2 groups from the NBDA has been on lower footfall. So they're tracking how many people are coming into the store. Well, where does that line up in our marketing funnel? That's with those prospects, where people aren't necessarily engaging and moving in there. And that can influence how we approach our marketing. Certainly, sending out emails and marketing to your existing customer base, people that you've interacted with before, is valuable, but that's more on that retention side of things. That doesn't help you with getting the engagement of moving someone from being a suspect to being aware of your brand and moving through. And so you can think about these aspects of, where am I doing a great job? If it was farther down and say we have leads, but we're not converting, well, okay, then that's, as Peter Henry mentioned, a lot of that sales training on converting people through, that's a big aspect of it. But a lot of that historical sales training has really just been focused on accelerating people from that prospect phase straight through to a customer phase in one experience. When the reality of it, with my couple of decades in a bicycle shop, especially for bicycle purchases, it takes a few visits. And so there's more of these steps to think about. I don't have all the answers. I do know that some of the other panelists are going to have more expertise on certain stages and how to help. But I just wanted to give a broad view of how I was thinking about with my project, moving retailers through the marketing funnel for my project, in the same way that retailers can think about their customers, or suppliers can think about their retailers moving through their individual marketing funnels.
Peter, that was excellent. I like how you share the tie-in with the work that you do, the so important work you do for the industry. And I like the little diagram, took some great notes from that. So thank you for that overview, Peter. Yeah, we do have 2 more speakers, so let's keep this conversation going. I think that was a great way to open it up. Thrilled to have Brett Lang from Ikiono here. Brett, thanks for being here and for speaking on this topic.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brett Lang, co-founder of Ikiono. We work with about 2,000 bike shops. We've been doing this for coming up on 8 years now, and have seen a lot of stuff in 8 years, as I'm sure a lot of people in the industry have. Peter kind of talked about it. Peter Henry talked about it a little bit, of that COVID era was, you were beating people away at the front door. There was no aspect of salesmanship, because if you had the product, it was leaving. And now we are kind of beyond that era. And so we're back to a product surplus. And with that, we need to be a lot more kind of intelligent with how we're engaging with customers. And so, over the years, I've had the fortunate ability to kind of interact with a lot of different verticals. We work in different industries other than the bike shop. And with that, we've met interesting people. And so one of those calls was with an individual who helped create the algorithm that car dealers use to target their customers. And what he said is, The only thing that matters is that you're targeting the right customer with the right information. You don't want to tell somebody who's looking at minivans about the new Bentley that's coming out, because you're going to ruin that customer for both brands. And so he sold that algorithm. He's retired. He runs a fishing store down in Florida, so he's living that good life. But I took that to heart. And then a couple of years ago, Specialized came to us and they wanted to build a tool, right? They noticed trends. They noticed that there was sticker shock going on. Buying a bike had become so expensive that customers were declining accessory add-ons. And with that, they wanted to start following up with customers. And so we talk about, Peter Woolery talked a good bit about the entire funnel. But oftentimes what we like to recommend is that your best customer is the one that's already bought from you, because they've already gone through that funnel, right? It's not about necessarily getting net new, which, don't get me wrong, is incredibly important, but also getting those existing customers back into your business because they've already bought into the brand. They've already gone through the funnel. So it's connecting with those customers about the things that they are most interested in. And so what we have seen a lot of great success with, and I'm coming to this more as recommending what we are seeing shops do. I don't have slides. I'm going to do a great job of preparing, if I'm being honest. But from that perspective, what we would recommend are new bike follow-ups. What we are seeing are customers are declining accessory add-ons at the purchase point from new bikes because they are so expensive. New bikes cost more than my first car did. And with that, the sticker shock, we have found that if we can get that customer back into the business within a short time frame, they're much more inclined to add those accessories. So following up with customers, say 2 weeks later, great success with things like, hey, it's not uncommon for things to settle over the first couple of rides. Let us know if you'd like to bring it in for a quick checkup. That gets the customer back into the business without the pretense of like, hey, here's a 15% off coupon. We've seen that approach becoming less and less successful because it's constant, right? I can go to any website and I know that if I put something in a cart and I leave that website for a few hours, I'm going to get a 10% off coupon as a abandoned cart. So when it's always 10% off, that's just the price. So what we recommend is approaching those customers more so educationally. Get them back into the business. They've separated from that initial purchase, and they are much more inclined to do those accessory add-ons. Hey, you mentioned I should get some pedals while I was here. Let's go ahead and get you in for that. And so we're also seeing that in relation to service. I love disc brakes. The integrated bikes, they're beautiful, they're great, they're sexy, they're a pain in the ass to work on. And we haven't done necessarily a great job as an industry setting that expectation with consumers that these beautiful new bikes are really difficult to work on. And so with that, we are seeing a lot of customers decline services during the process. Disc brakes become spongy over time. We just become conditioned to it. And it's only after somebody really points it out that we hyper focus on it. So we're seeing great success following up with service visits of 2 weeks later, send a text saying like, hey, you recently had your bike service with us. We would or email. Sorry, I'm a little bit text inclined. We recommend following up saying, it's been a couple of weeks since you've had a tune-up. We just want to make sure everything's rolling well. And we're seeing customers who are responding with things like, hey, so-and-so mentioned I should replace my cassette. I'm really noticing the shifting isn't as smooth as I like. Can I bring it back in? And then last but not least is education, right? We talked about kind of setting those customer expectations right off the bat. And what's funny is I've been doing calls with shops all over the US and setting up these kind of campaigns to follow up with customers after the fact. And the one that every shop I talk to wants to set up is a tubeless sealant reminder text. It's hilarious because we as an industry told consumers, go tubeless and you'll never get a flat tire. You should replace the sealant every 6 months. We kind of forgot that last part. And so with that, we recommend approaching customers educationally. we're at a point in the industry where the product itself is the commodity, right? It can be gotten anywhere, online, every aspect of it. What the IBD brings to the table is that knowledge base and that point of contact. And in the world of the internet, a source of reason. And so what's funny about the tubeless specifically is that it's so regionally dependent. Somebody in Arizona wants to send that message on a shorter time frame because there's no humidity and it's so dry that the sealant actually dries up faster than somebody who is in somewhere like Seattle. And so when you're thinking about kind of following up with customers, it's very regionally dependent. A bike shop in Denver, Colorado, where I am, communicates with their customer very differently than a bike shop in New York City, than a bike shop in Seattle, than a bike shop in Montreal, Canada. And so we recommend tailoring the conversation specifically to what that customer is interested in and that is specific to your locale, right? Part of the brand that bike shops bring to the table is kind of this nuanced aspect of they're starting to specialize in a way that they're very mountain bike specific, they're very road bike specific, they're very gravel specific, they're city commuter. So you should tailor your language and your communication to those customers to pertain to what they are purchasing from your business. You know, I think we can all agree that we're all a little burnt out on just kind of generalized mass promotional messaging. So make sure that you're being very nuanced with it and communicating with your customers how you do when they actually come into your business.
Excellent. Brett, thank you so much. I really like how you focused on the final part of that funnel, which is that loyalty, that customer, keeping them coming back to you. And yes, you're right. In our P2 groups and our retailer member mingles, we're all consistently hearing retailers talking about those follow-up messaging and how important it is. So great reminders. And thank you for sharing today with us. I thought you were expertly prepared. Fantastic. Brandon Morfu is our next speaker with Miso Partners. Been a great NBDA contributor to our panel events. Brandon, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Heather, and panelists for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm Brandon Morphew. I have a marketing agency. We're based just outside of Boston in Massachusetts. We've been here for over 10 years now. We focus on supporting bicycle retailers as well as other industries. So our background has really been in service industries, e-commerce, retail, and bicycle retailers are a big part of that. So today I want to focus on aligning messaging throughout that customer journey. So I'll be talking about the different ROI for each of the strategies that work in retail. The goal is to help think through what you're going to spend financially as well as time on different activities that drive results. So we have some comprehensive research that I'll share at the end around different marketing channels, retail marketing channels. So this is another way to visualize the funnel. A rider walks into your store just to browse. 3 months later, they book a $5,000 road bike fit. That's the funnel. It's a funnel at work. They didn't just miraculously enter at the bottom. The funnel represents the customer journey. So this is the process from being strangers to loyal advocates. Each stage in the funnel requires different strategies. So awareness tactics only won't work for conversion. You have potential customers that enter at the top. There's various discovery channels. Not everyone makes it through, and that's expected and normal. The goal is optimization. So you want to consistently work on improving conversion rates at each stage throughout the funnel. So at the top of the funnel, you have volume. You're really trying to reach a large number of those suspects that Peter mentioned. As you move towards the bottom of the funnel, you want to focus on value and precision. So you want to be more effective there towards the bottom. You want to begin by asking, who is our ideal customer? What are their needs at each stage in the funnel? And then use that to identify their motivations, awareness, consideration for purchase, and loyalty. And then throughout the marketing mix, you want to evolve as the consumer travels down the funnel. So from a broad value-driven storytelling at the top to trust-building comparisons in the middle, and then urgency and convenience at the bottom. So you're changing your messaging as they're going through the funnel. An e-bike curious commuter in your city sees your YouTube video, 5 things to know before buying an e-bike. She didn't know your shop existed before that. Now she's subscribed and watching. You identify the areas where your customers hang out, whether that's search, YouTube, community events, bike rides, and you want to build personas around each of those consumers and how they discover new products or new shops. For your messaging, you want to focus on customer pain points or aspirations, not products. So think here, why do we exist? Why we exist, rather than what we sell. A weekend warrior clicks on an Instagram ad, signs up for your newsletter, and a month later, they download the Bike Fit Myths Debunked, and a month later, they sign up for your fitting clinic. At this stage, customers are comparing. They're asking questions. They have hesitations. What info would make them feel more confident and comfortable? So here are good strategies that are using social proof, education, interactive tools like quizzes, webinars, testimonials. Personalize the experience. Create those aha moments to help build trust. And then we get to the bottom. So you send a retargeting ad to someone who abandoned an appointment online. The message includes a book now and get a free saddle fitting incentive, and they come in that weekend. So at the bottom of the funnel, we want to identify the triggers that convert hesitant browsers into buyers. Do they need a financing option, a bundle? What do they need to feel urgency? And here it's about delivering clear, risk-reducing messages. So book a fitting today, only 3 spots left. Try now, pay later. Optimize that frictionless checkout or appointment booking. And then post funnel. So a gravel rider gets a birthday email with 10% off tires. He uses it to prep for the shop's ride that weekend, brings a friend who's never been in before. So what happens after the sale? What are you doing to delight your customers, get them back in the shop, or inspiring them to bring friends? Here it's about reinforcing value and appreciation, using personalization, service reminders, birthday rewards, developing community, and inviting them in to increase that emotional connection. One thing I think Brett mentioned that I wanted to bring up, tags are really valuable here. So if you have the opportunity to identify what your customers are buying and how they got into your funnel, like where they came from, this super valuable opportunity as you're catering specific communications to them. And then this is a sort of macro view, but this is a consolidated across a whole bunch of retail, online and brick and mortar. But this chart can help you to prioritize your efforts. So email, SMS, referral programs, they have the highest ROI and the fastest time to value. And I will say SMS specifically, that's over 90% open rates versus email, which is 20% or lower and declining over time. The most effective funnel strategies often combine these channels. So top of funnel with YouTube and search, mid funnel retargeting, and bottom funnel using SMS to close. Yeah, so prioritize what you control. The things that you actually can focus on. You can't do everything, so be consistent. Small gains add up. And feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions or want some help with your marketing. Thank you.
Brandon, thank you so much. What an enlightening final graph there that you showed. Really, really enlightening to see that. And I appreciate you showing that and sharing your expertise with the attendees today. Susan Clark, nice to see you. I just saw you on today. Great to have you here. Any open discussion on this topic from our panel members? Anyone else want to share insight on the marketing funnel?
That might give me a pair.
So important that we're focused on building demand, and every single retailer is a great exercise to look at what your funnel is, all the steps of your funnel, and making sure that you're just really working to your optimal level within each stage of that funnel. All right, then we'll move on to topic 2. Oh, Susan, thanks. Yeah, I saw you. Yeah, would love to have your voice.
Sure. Yeah, I really appreciated the visuals. So thanks to everybody for those. I think that really helps. Kind of, a lot of us are doing some of those things, but it's really nice to see those. And, again, just for those of you that are out there, maybe wondering what are some of the things that you can do, because we don't all have marketing services available to us, but that last slide where it really showed the the impact that we have with referral programs, our return on investment is quite high on that, and the education piece that we can give to people that they can give to their friends. One of the things we developed in the store is a card that leaves with every person. And the card is as important to our staff as it is to the customer. And it's a lot of information on there, all those things, those best practices that we want to pass on to people. And it doesn't take too much money to make something that you can send home with people that they can share with their friends and family as well, to help them understand how to take care of their bike or some things that they might need on their journey.
Yeah, Susan, I love that you just shared what you're doing there. Yeah, Brett, were you going to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great example. So the original thing we built with Specialized was designed to emulate the Apple experience. So basically they wanted, anytime somebody bought a turbo bike, they would get a text message with a link to things like the Rider app, warranty registration, and all of that good stuff. And so what you're talking about is that concept, right? It's that anytime you buy a brand new iPhone and you turn it on, 10 minutes later, you get an email saying like, hey, here's all the cool stuff you can do about it. And I think, to your point, buying a bike is becoming more and more complex, right? It can be a little bit overwhelming, especially with e-bikes. There's so much technology in it, they feel a little overwhelming. And so that's reinforcing your business as that source of knowledge, that source of like, hey, we're here to take care of you. Like, just enjoy the ride and we'll be there along the way. Excellent. So.
Yeah. And, this funnel is not all on the retailer's, list of things to do, and it's not all for the suppliers to do. When we're talking about growing ridership, we can always talk about working in partnership. So if you're a retailer listening to this and you're thinking of your marketing funnel, and ask your suppliers, like, what role can they help you in those various stages? Because there are tools that exist. And if you're a supplier, ask the retailer, like, how you can work in partnership as well. So really great discussion. I appreciate all the expert opinions that were shared. Let's definitely move on to topic 2 at this point. This one is MAP versus MSRP, and talking about pricing for a sustainable future. So is MAP, that's a minimum advertised price, helping or hurting the long-term health of our industry? Can retailers truly thrive under current MAP constraints? Or we need to look at MSRP as the standard. Again, not to, we're not coming together to violate any antitrust laws. We're just sharing some opinions around this. And these are all just opinions that are to be shared, to be digested as you wish. But we have 3 speakers on this topic. So I expect this to be thought-provoking. Larry Black from Mount Airy Bicycle, a retailer, for our first speaker. Larry, thanks for being here.
Hi, can you hear me?
Perfect. Yep.
So way back in Jay's days, 70s is when I got into it. Early 70s, I call it Bike Boom 1. There was a Schwinn catalog, and it had 3 prices: Midwest, East, and West. Midwest was X, East was $2 more per bike, maybe 5 for a Paramount, and $3 more on the West Coast. And I guess that had to do with the shipping. And everybody sold at that price. The bikes came in these huge boxes, both wheels on. Probably the bikes averaged 35 pounds or so with a, and that was just it. That was I forget what they called it back then, but it was an enforced price. Schwinn's were mostly sold at Total Concept stores. I think right before the 70s, 60s, 50s, they were in hardware stores and sporting goods places and things like that. But then they did Total Concept stores, and you had to be a Schwinn store that may have carried other bikes, or and Jay will correct me if I'm wrong. They didn't want you to be a bike store that happened to carry Schwinn, and we were not a Total Concept store. We were a hardware, bicycle, keys, and other things like that, power equipment. And over the years, we watched things change. Come the 1980s with the Reagan era, pricing things, they were price controls. And Univega came out and they did pricing that was kind of, I think it was a little bit of a gimmick or a hook, saying the bike is not $179.99, it was $168.42. And the people were supposed to think that was the lowest price we could sell it for legally. And I don't know how that worked. Today, advertised price, I think a good use of this minimum price would be to prevent the opportunist bike shop person from coming in, giving marginal service on the bike, and just going for what Bob Margevecchius calls high velocity sales. Okay. In fact, I met with Bob last night, and I went over some of these things with him, and got a lot out of that last night, and some predictions for the future that our resident futurist here might agree with, but that will be a little discreet right now. One of the topics I want to bring up, and I think this is the best place to do it, is that in my 50 something years in the pulpit and the trenches of this retail business, we give added value. So I have usually been at or above some of these prices, because in the James Moore theory of life, that $300 bicycle, $50 of it is James Moore. Okay, so when he gives a refund, we have all sales final, but we've been known to be flexible. When he gives a refund, he doesn't give the James Moore part back. You can't get that back. It was time. So I'm not for strict policing. I believe what two people do in their cubicle or their room is up to them. Consenting adults. That's the buyer and the seller. I don't like to see advertising at discount prices. I think that creates a perceived value in the consumer, and they consider us a scoundrel for being above. And I am at or above. In times of distress, I will be known to make a nod, wink, wink deal with somebody, sure. But I don't turn over a lot of, I don't do EPs unless it's something that consumer or employee is going to actually use. Okay, maybe immediate family exceptions if they're a good proactive player for the business. But today's my recent peeve, with especially during the proliferation of e-bikes, which is an ease of entry business. You can go to Asia, you can say, I want this bike, I want this name, and I want this thing. Fortunately, a lot of these companies have surprised me. I really thought some of these newer players with names I hadn't heard of until 10 years ago were just back alley garage places, but they have parts, they have support, both the onliners and the bike shop people. But my thing concerns the false, and I put a posting from the law firm which quotes a lot of FTC rulings. And I believe, just like we don't want what's called antitrust, that's colluding for prices, I believe that some of these, there are almost 1,000 class action suits as of today. And it's encroaching on the sporting goods segment that we're in. Class action suits about misleading false list prices. I subscribe to 2 news alerts. One is deceptive design. The other is dark patterns. You look those up sometime, deceptive design and dark patterns. That's where they bait you to click on something that's actually a purchase that's very hard to get out of, okay? It's probably easier to remove a tattoo than it is to get off of, well, we know you can't get off of Facebook once something's on there. And it's very hard to get out of this. Or sign up for this medicine and we will bill you monthly. Try getting out of that. So I just got a retail email a month ago. This was the most blatant. A e-bike from a well-known company that is represented in mass, big box, and some retailers, with their yet to be launched e-bike, $4,199. If you sign up and commit at a pre-launch, it's $2,199. That's about 48% off retail, and they let you know it. And it's not that it was a dump or a closeout or anything like that. It was a yet to be launched e-bike, center drive motor, maybe a Bosch, something high end. So a high end e-bike at a price too good to pass up. Some companies, many, 3 of the ones I represent are guilty of this deceptive pricing too. And they have countdown clocks. And Black Friday for some started in September of 2024. Then we had a New Year's sale, Christmas sale, Father's Day, Mother's Day, Easter, MLK Day. We had a sale every 10 days. Ever since my prodding, one of the companies has slowed down because they might feel the crunch coming for litigation or pre-trial settlement. So, and I've never seen this so burgeoning as it has since these modern e-bikes have come out. And I don't know if I'm off the wall here, but I am prepared to become part of any group that wants to go after my own industry in this, because it's very confusing. It's, to me, this pricing with countdown clocks is almost as I forget, unethical as the confusion of the tariff, the unknown tariff, which is August 1st now. I heard from Bob, it's really happening August 1st. And he showed me that what's called OH, on-hand bicycles, in certain segments is 1 month. Other OH segments have 20 months of on-hand. So that's the big point I wanted to make today, is deceptive pricing. We have always been a store that's had passion and pride over profit, and going to the sales floor with their knowing that I don't have to make this sale to pay my bills has actually been an asset to us, because the consumers that we generate understand that we have to be here. We have to get a certain amount to do this. Doesn't mean we're inflexible, but they know that when they get a bike from us, it's because we believe in the bike. And another term one of my employees came up with is predatory selling. Predatory selling on the supplier's part. And especially, my ceiling is graced with probably $500,000 at retail worth of bikes that were sold by predatory bike shops, bikes that these customers had no business buying or owning, ill fits, misfits, and just bad merchandise. They don't take them back. They say, go see Larry. He will take care of you and buy your bike. He takes trade-ins and buys used bikes. That's about all I've got, and I welcome any personal messaging. It's Larry at bike123.com or in the chat. And maybe I'm one of the group of 24 here to have this feeling, but I just don't think it's right for this predatory pricing thing. So hopefully that relates to today's topic, and I am done.
Larry, thank you so much. I do like to hear your shared personal experience, so I appreciate that. Second speaker is Peter Woolery from Bicycle Market Research. Thanks, Peter.
Absolutely. Thank you, Larry. You definitely have some good insights there. And certainly on the predatory pricing, I think we're seeing some momentum swing to have a little bit better regulation. But as with most government action, it's slow. So we'll have to see there. What I'm going to talk about here is really just those two constraints of MAP and MSRP and how it affects our market just from a high level point of view, right? And I've been fortunate to be able to work with Ryan Atkinson and some of the other Workstand crew and have seen some of the research that they've done internally. So prior to the pandemic, what they found was that bicycles on average on their platform were sold at some discount. So here you can see an arbitrary number of 100, we'll just call it 100% of retail is that light MSRP line, and then MAP being 90%. Again, we don't have hard numbers on these, but it gives you a good idea. So what Workstand found was that pre-pandemic, the average was at some discount. Certainly some were sold at MSRP and others at greater amounts. And what happened during the pandemic was that retailers jumped up to MSRP. So even though prices went up, when they looked through their data, they didn't find any price gouging. They found that prices went up to MSRP and pretty consistently stayed there for roughly a year, maybe two, depending on how you define that year. So here we can see that first constraint, that MSRP creates an artificial ceiling on the price that most retailers will sell their bikes for. As Larry pointed out, some retailers are going to charge more for it. And realistically, from a pure market standpoint, it makes some sense. There's more demand for products. Prices naturally go up to a certain threshold. We don't want to get into price gouging territory. But if there's higher demand, there's more value for that retailer to capture. Others now we're starting to see instituting assembly fees and the like. So those types of things carry some reputational risk when a consumer sees an MSRP on a brand website. Thankfully, we're starting to see some brands, like I think Giant is doing it now, where that price doesn't include assembly and other delivery fees. So it starts to establish in the mind that, hey, this isn't as hard of a ceiling as we've sort of made it out to be up till now. Following those initial years of the pandemic, what we saw was a decline in pricing, right? Consumer demand declined. And so naturally, retailers lowered their prices to minimum advertised pricing or quickly did that. The challenge was that we started to hit a floor. We couldn't list below that, even though demand for or from the consumers had gone down below it. Now, it makes some sense. We want to protect those. And there were some great examples of making sure that we are not having some predatory competitor move into a market and essentially destroy the profitability just because one has the cash to be able to withstand that storm. In the same regard, we had a unique situation with COVID where demand was going down so rapidly relative to the amount of inventory that we had that MAP couldn't really keep up. So we ended up in a situation now, because we couldn't advertise at that level, that a lot of retailers ended up with aged, expensive inventory on hand because their overall market really constricted from that broader suspects that we could advertise to down to just whoever walked through our doors and could see the physical pricing we were wanting to discount to. And my point here is really just that MAP and MSRP put constraints on the market. In a normal situation, right, we're not going to see as rapid of changes. And so suppliers are able to adjust those expected MAP and MSRP changes to what the market would normally behave as. Over the last couple of years, it was a pretty extreme example where demand dropped off relative to how much inventory we had. And we really couldn't keep up with that. And that highlighted the constraint that MAP puts on that lower bound. And that's something that in Europe, MAP pricing really isn't allowed. There's some workarounds to it, but it's not allowed in the same way that it's a pretty de facto thing in the United States. Probably not going to go away because we have large industries like computers and the like that have that. But my point with this is really just to point out that these two aspects apply artificial constraints to the normal market conditions that we would have. And what I see in the used bike segment is those rapidly declined, probably to too much of an extreme than we as retailers would really want. But it gives some interesting research for a nerd like me.
Peter, thank you for sharing the data. I like the data. I like how you always bring it back to exactly, why what's happening now and what is at the root cause. So I appreciate you and the Nerd Collective for the work that you all do. Our final speaker today on this topic is Richard Wittenberg from Truxus. Richard, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Let's see if I can actually click on the right screen and get this thing going in the right way. So first of all, being the last person up, you get to listen to everybody's thoughts, and I think everybody's done an amazing job outlining what the issue is. And my goal over the next 10 minutes is really to share with everybody out there, from a manufacturer's perspective, what we're looking at in terms of MAP and MSRP. Why do we do it? How do we do it? What can we do? What can't we do? And I'll preface this with the fact that we are an e-bike company, but we are facing from the manufacturer side of this a struggle, because we have competitors, and I'm not going to name names, but most of the people on this call will know them, are very, very actively pursuing exceptionally aggressive online direct-to-consumer marketing strategies that are absolutely impacting retailers who are participating in this space. And when I took the helm of Truxus about 24 months ago, it was really all about how do we make this a profitable segment for our retailers and our partners. And having dealt with throughout my career certain online players from overseas and things, I've seen firsthand that without MAP or without MSRP, it destroys brands, it destroys products. When you look at what the big S has had to go through when our friends over across the pond were discounting SPD pedals to below cost to try to generate foot traffic, you realize very quickly if there isn't some sort of guidance, things can go awry quite quickly. So again, I'm not going to belabor the points that have already been hit, but why do we do these? One, we believe in MAP and MSRP to help guide our dealer to what the proper competitive positioning for our products are. So, I strategically price my products in comparison to the other online retailers, providing our retailers a much higher margin structure than these direct-to-consumer products. The only way I know how to do that is by creating a MAP and MSRP structure that guides our retailers to sell them for the profit that we feel they need in order to be successful with our product. And we want to prevent online price wars. And if you look 20 years ago, there was ways you could duck and hide what you were pricing things for, right? If you ran an article in the Boston Globe and you lived in LA, the chances of you seeing that article or that price were non-existent. Now, through the internet, somebody changes a price, every algorithm on the face of the planet knows you've changed that price, and it completely destroys any stability within the pricing structure. So I would actually say that it is more important now that we have MSRP and MAP pricing in place to prevent a rapid race to the bottom on pricing. And then, look, and as Heather said at the beginning, we're only strong if we're all strong. It means me as a brand, you as retailers, our manufacturing partners. If we're all not making money, this doesn't end up in the right place. So what can we as a manufacturer do to help and I'll call it the whole ecosystem of product in the bike space? We cannot tell you what to sell your product for. When we're talking about MSRP and MAP, MAP stands, and it's very important to understand, it says minimum advertised price. What you do on your floor is completely up to you. I have no ability to control what you sell that bike for. What I can do is I can control who I sell unilaterally, as it was brought up earlier. I can unilaterally decide who I will and I will not support and provide product to, but that's the only way I can ever control what somebody's selling it for. I can tell you what you can advertise it for, so that I can't remember who brought it up, if you're a small bike shop in Maine, I don't want you ruining the price, in Seattle, so I can control that. But all in all, people who carry our products are happy we have MSRP and MAP. And they're even happier that when the brand itself undercuts the pricing that you're trying to get, that's a big problem, right? Because then the brand is forcing you into selling it at a lower price than necessarily you would want to sell it for. So this is all great in theory, but then what happens when the rubber meets the road, right? There's this reality. In a perfect world, we'd all be Rolex watches, right? You do not get a discount on a Rolex watch no matter what. There is or an Apple product, right? There is one price, that's the price, that's what you pay for it, no matter where in the world you are. Unfortunately, we live in a much more dynamic market where supply in many cases can outstrip demand by a factor of 10. And that creates huge pricing pressure, as Peter pointed out, right? As you, the independent retailer, have become more out of necessity willing to look at brands that have multi-channel distribution strategy. When I started in this business in 1981, I remember how brands, if they went into mail order, were just blown out of a bike shop left, right, and center. You didn't carry them, right? And we were talking about how Schwinn used to price their product. You wouldn't be able to launch a product direct to consumer in a mail order catalog in the 80s. Now, if you're not direct to consumer and have some of that visibility, the brand doesn't sell through, and dealers are almost begging for it. So we have to understand that the advertised price is becoming much more visible and not less visible. And then lastly, unfortunately, especially in these economic times, and as Peter also pointed out in his slide, consumers have been conditioned, and I think also Mr. Black said, customers have been conditioned to buy when something's on sale. And we all hate it. I want to have one price for my product. But unfortunately, I'm competing in an environment where I have all of my competitors driving sales because they're direct to consumer focused through discounting their products online. And also to Larry's point, are these discounts reasonable? And I can't compete with it. The retailers who purchase the product are challenged with it. But again, it's up to us to figure out how to work around that, because the market is what the market is. So, we created for Troxis an MSRP and an MAP with a $100 gap between the two prices. So the MSRP gives our dealers about 40 points, and our MAP pricing gives our dealers about 36 points. And that $100 swing is there just for us to be able to, when we need to accelerate sales to compete with other brands in our space, I can do that, but still provide the profitability for the dealers that we have in our network to survive. And I think lastly, irregardless of MSRP and MAP, and really what I'm starting to talk about more is, as you as retailers are having to compete more and more with direct to consumer alternatives to your revenue streams, make sure you get paid for what you do, right? And we talked a little bit about Giants move towards, doesn't include assembly and delivery fee because, there's this thing called the auto dealers who have been dealing with this level of struggle on pricing, since the dawn of the industry. And I'm sorry, the slides are not more easy to read, but I have that highlighted in green as you're spending $35,000 for a car, and they're going to charge you another $1,800 to deliver it to you, to take some paperwork off of it and plastic off the seats and hand you the keys, right? That's their way of giving dealers a little bit more profitability. And I think we need to start thinking more like this in our inventory of, if you come in and you're trying to compare me to a direct-to-consumer brand who's going to deliver the bike in a box, then here, I can match that price. Here's a bike in the box. But if you want everything that I do for you, which is assemble it, tune it, give you a 30, 60, 90-day tune-up on the bike, and I'm here when you've got a problem, excuse me, then I need to charge you for that. And if you look at e-bike specific retailers, opposed to standard retailers, IBDs, e-IBDs have embraced this much more readily than classic IBDs. And I don't know if that's because it's just a different group of people running these stores, or there's a mind shift within that e-bike community that it's acceptable. And I don't have the answer to that for you. So really, to summarize this quickly, MSRP is the price that we use as the benchmark for where you should start. MAP is where we're going to promote it, but still maintain your profitability. And the reality is, customers are going to buy when there's some overwhelming need to make that purchase. And whether it's a discount of $100 or it's that their other bike broke and they've now got to replace it right away, people aren't just shopping, they're needing a reason to buy, and we've got to give them that reason. So that's all I got.
Richard, thank you. It's always enlightening to hear everyone's unique viewpoint. I appreciate our panel members speaking on this important topic. Would anyone else like to have some open conversation on this topic at this point? Any other panel members? I see some comments in chat, but no questions from our attendees. Susan? Yeah.
Yeah, I really loved hearing from everybody. Larry, really dynamic perspective to hear from you with over 50 years experience. So thanks. Richard, really liked listening to having that perspective from a brand. And Peter, of course, I'm a fan of your data always. So thank you for that. And I think actually Peter's slide showing what happened in the pandemic shows the extreme event that is required for people to be selling at MSRP these days. Like, let's not kid ourselves. I think us thinking people are selling at MSRP, I'd love to meet some of those shops, because I personally, as a bicycle retailer, can't find that happening anywhere. So up in Canada, but I'd love to learn a little bit more. I mean, I can think of some of the boutique shops that might be successful in that. One of the things that I'd love to make a point for advocacy was, if we are lobbying suppliers as a group, that we would sure love to be a little more protected, especially our margins. And one of the things we talked about in the last topic was using marketing budgets to position their bikes differently. So it would be really wonderful if there could be a collective swings from some of the bigger brands. And I see that coming. Like, we did receive some messaging from a couple of the larger brands that they're wanting to dig into the experience inside of the shop. And they're feeling like the consumers now are getting fatigue of buying something and having to mail it back. And so this might be a time where we see that. And like, one of the other things, the support from our reps, that statement, we can choose who we sell to, we're often fighting a little bit for that. And the reps are saying, well, we want to have representation in your city. We want to move units. But when we have somebody that's constantly undervaluing the items below that MRP, it's really a struggle for those of us that are trying to adhere to it. And then maybe the last thing that I just wanted to mention, I feel like we need a little more government legislation to protect us from that kind of drop ship type company that isn't they only want to sell to the consumer directly. And I feel like there's not enough legislation that exists right now to help protect us from that. We've just stopped working completely on stuff that we haven't been trained on in terms of the e-bike world, because it's not that it's not worth our time, but it's expensive. So anyway, thanks so much, guys.
We'll take just a couple more comments here. Richard, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to mention, Susan, that we are seeing a definite move within our particular space where where brands were coming in, not caring about the service element to their products, very much making that pivot. If you look at Rad Power, for instance, and the efforts that they're putting into building out a dealer network, Velatric and Aventon, they're all making a very big push to try to do that for exactly that reason. Now, the question is the dealer base going to accept that? And, being not their primary, where they're eating, but yet they're succeeding because the dealers are supporting them. That's the piece where I'm sitting back and just looking at and saying, how are the retailers going to respond to that? And are they going to just say, hey, it's okay, they're driving people in my door and I'll just take the revenue? Or are they saying, hey, I can't support this, I need to support people who support us?
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, some good things to think about here. Jay, I'll let you chime in here. Jay
Well,
Townley.
first of all, Larry's correct in that it was fair trade. However, that was federal law, to Susan's point. So what Schwinn did is had dealers sign a separate fair trade agreement along with what was then a franchise agreement. It later became an authorized dealer agreement. But the fair trade agreement that the dealer signed then allowed what Larry referred to as these different zoned pricing that was in the Schwinn catalogs and also the advertised pricing. To Richard's point, we have begun with the cabinet shows this year to advocate for dealers to do two things. One is in order to get some stability in retail pricing is to take over retail pricing, but do it through two things. One, negotiate the authorized dealer agreements where they exist relative to that issue so that you've got legal grounds. And number two, don't sign authorized dealer agreements that don't give you some ability to deal with the pricing issue. Now, if a brand, as Richard is doing, will protect you, then embrace the brand. So essentially, we're advocating do not enter into authorized dealer agreements with brands that will not work with you and truly partner you relative to partner with you relative to pricing or allow you to work on it, and keep it within federal law. And then, Susan, right now the NBDA, and I don't want to speak for you, Heather, but we've had a lot on our plate legislatively. Tariffs are not the least of the issues that we're still, as Larry pointed out, we're still going to have to deal with. But I will go back to the day when fair trade pricing, and Peter will remember this, and Larry should, was by federal law, by federal law underpinning agreement that the Congress, in its infinite wisdom, determined sometime in the 70s to strike down. So we can go back to it, but it's going to have to be a concerted effort. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. And I love that Susan brings up that there's so much to be said for the experience in the store. And I just want to, I think, end today's event with that. There's so much to be said for the experience that happens in the store. And I actually think if we look at this from the both topics, focusing number one on growing ridership, on building that funnel, that experience that happens in the store is so important. It's such a vital part of that. And then even on topic two, when we're talking about MSRP and MAP, we've seen it firsthand before. Customers are willing to spend more if that experience is demanding of that. So great insight today. Such a fabulous panel. Thanks again to the experts who lended their opinions to our attendees today. Peter, thank you for kicking us off with that fantastic call to action, words for good. This will be available on YouTube as of tomorrow, and then also as a podcast feature on Bicycle Retail Radio. Our next event is set for Tuesday, October 7th, 2025. We'll send the information out to our community on that event. We'll have new topics to discuss and always welcome new panel members to the conversation. You can reach me at heather@nbda.com if you'd like to get more involved, and appreciates everyone's insight. And yeah, let's continue to develop our thoughts on both these topics, and hopefully we'll see some things come in the future. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.